Hello students. So today in this video I am going to discuss the topic homeostasis. So homeostasis is related with human physiology, human body. So over here you see there is a definition what is homeostasis. So homeo means sameness, stasis means standing still. So standing same, keeping same, remaining same, making the body conditions same. So homeostasis is the condition of equilibrium in the body's internal environment due to the constant interaction of the body's many regulatory processes. So body's internal environment, you can say body's blood balance, temperature balance, ions, energy, all these are needed in equilibrium. If there is any kind of deficiency, any kind of imbalance, the body has certain mechanism to keep it balanced, to make it balance. So homeostasis is a dynamic condition. In response to changing conditions, the body's equilibrium can shift among points in a narrow range that is compatible with maintaining life. So, for example, the level of glucose in the blood normally stays between 70 and 110 milligrams of glucose per 100 milliliters of blood. So, this is the normal condition, normal state of glucose level is average level in human. Each human have to maintain their blood level within this range. Blood glucose level should be maintained in this range. If there is any imbalance, that is glucose level fall below this 30 or increased beyond 110, it is referred to as imbalance. So homeostasis is to maintain this balance, this steady state. Same like oxygen, gases like carbon dioxide, oxygen should be maintained in equilibrium in the blood so that human body functions normally. Each structures from the cellular level to the system level contributes in some way to keeping the internal environment of the body within normal limits. So there are many parts, many organs, cellular level, every part, every level of organization in the animal body, human body is responsible to make this equilibrium, to make the balance of this parameters so that functioning of body keeps smoothly going on. An important aspect of homeostasis is maintaining the volume and composition of body fluid. If we talk about body fluids, so homeostasis means over here to maintain the volume and its composition, amount and composition of body fluids. Body fluid, whether it should be diluted, whether it should be concentrated, whether it should be in normal range, it's all is maintained by a body itself so that cells, tissues, organ system functions normally. The body fluids, watery solutions containing dilute chemicals that are found inside the cell as well as surrounding. So in our body, each and every cell is bathed in a body fluid, so that each and every cell gets its nutrients, each and every cell gets decant of, get its oxygen, its waste should be removed. So there are certain physiological processes which are in constant exchange within the body, cell, inside the cell, from inside to outside, or from outside to inside a single cell, a single tissue. The body fluids within cell is intracellular fluid, abbreviated ICF. The body fluid that are present outside of the cell are known as extracellular fluid, or ECF. The ECF is that fills the narrow space between cells of tissues is known as interstitial fluid. The fluid which are present between the tissues, cells of tissues, are known as interstitial. The ECF differs depending upon where it occurs in the body. So there are different type of ECF. Its location define its name. For example, the extracellular fluid which is present within blood vessels is termed as blood plasma. When the ECF extracellular fluid is present within this lymphatic vessel, it is called lymph. And in and around the brain and spinal cord, it is known as cerebrospinal fluid. This fluid, extracellular fluid, body fluid, has different name, different composition in the whole body, in different organ system. The body fluid had different name, is known as by different name. Like your brain and spinal cord, it is known by the name cerebrospinal fluid. And in joints, it is referred to as synovial fluid. And the ECF of eye is called aqueous humor and vitreous in the body, vitreous body. So homeostasis and body fluid says there are body fluid which are present different organs, different body parts. They have different composition. They are known with different names. So their composition, their volume should be maintained in a particular defined range. If there is any imbalance, body try to maintain this balance by different methods, which we will discuss in our next videos. Here, the proper functioning of body cells depends on precise regulation of the composition of the interstitial fluid surrounding them. Because of this, interstitial fluid is often called body's internal environment. So as I have discussed, each and every cell is surrounded by fluid. Each and every cell is bathed in fluid. Their functioning, proper functioning, depends on the regulation, proper regulation, precise regulation of the composition. The intracellular fluid interstitial fluid that surround cell or tissue. So this internal environment of the cell of the body should be well balanced. Their composition should be well balanced so that body cells properly function. The composition of interstitial fluid changes as substance moves back and forth between it and blood plasma. So composition changes. There is exchange between the interstitial fluid and the blood plasma. Do you know blood runs in blood vessels, and the interstitial fluid are present outside the blood plasma vessels. So there is a continuous exchange between the substances, between the material of respiratory gases, between the blood plasma and the interstitial fluid. Such exchange of material occurs across the thin wall of smallest blood vessel in the body, the blood capillaries. The blood capillaries are the thinnest, smallest vessels of the body, blood vessels. We have where there are tiny pores present through which the substances, respiratory gases, food material, waste, etc. are exchanged, moves in, moves out. This movement in both directional across capillary walls provide needed materials such as glucose, oxygen, ions, and so on to tissue cells. The movement of both direction, this movement of materials which are needed by the cells, like glucose is needed for energy, oxygen is needed that for the internal respiration, ions and other substances which are needed by the cell for its survival, for its proper functioning. So these all moves from capillary to the cell, to the tissue. It also removes waste such as carbon dioxide from interstitial fluid. So any waste material which a tissue, a cell produces is also removed from interstitial fluid to the blood capillaries. So next up, control of homeostasis. Who controls, how it is controlled, how homeostasis is maintained, how it balance is maintained. So homeostasis in the human body is continually being disturbed. So there are every time homeostasis is disturbed, changed, because some disturbances come from the internal environment in the form of physical insults such as intense heat of summer day or lack of enough oxygen for that 2-mile run. So whenever body do a lot of exercise, we walk a long distance, our body consume oxygen, glucose. So there is deprivation of this oxygen level or this glucose level. So level of glucose decreases down, oxygen demand increases. So this is called imbalance, disturbance of homeostasis. There are internal physical insult, internal environment. There is change in the internal environment due to some physical activities like intense heat in the summer day. Whenever there is intense heat in the summer, our body experience heat and it's try to cool down itself. So there may be perspiration, sweating, which results loss of water level in the blood. So in this way, homeostasis is disturbed. Other disruptions originated in the external environment such as blood glucose level that falls too low when you skip breakfast. When you do not take your breakfast or your meal, your body needs constant supply of glucose level, but you do not take it from outside. So there will be fall in the glucose level, and this fall will disturb your internal environment. In most cases, the disruption of homeostasis is mild and temporary, and the response of the body's fluid, your body cells, restore quickly balance in the internal environment. Most cases, it is mild and temporary. It means sometime there may be some internal change or external change, but it's not permanent. The body itself get repaired, body itself get restored its condition. However, in some cases, the disruption of homeostasis may be intense and prolonged, as in poisoning, overexposure to temperature extremes, severe infection, or major surgery. So, this kind of disturbances cannot be uh, repaired, restored. So, in this case, there may be damage, loss. Fortunately, the body has many regulating systems that can usually bring the internal environment back into balance. Most of the often the nervous system and the endocrine system working together or independently provide the need corrective measure. So there we have our nervous system, endocrine system. These two are the working. These two systems work independently as well as in coordination with each other to maintain our internal environment. Body's needs are fulfilled by these nervous system and endocrine system. For example, the nervous system regulates homeostasis by sending electrical signals known as nerve impulse to organs that can contract changes from the balanced state. The endocrine system include many glands that secretes messenger molecules called hormones into the blood. So nervous system sends its signal, electrical signal, nerve impulse to organ, target organ, any organ where there is an imbalance, homeostasis is disturbed to control it. Like endocrine system also have many glands. They secrete molecules, messenger molecules called hormones, and that hormones or molecule act on that particular organ or system and control and restore the homeostasis. Nerve impulses typically cause rapid changes, but hormones usually work more slowly. So both have their own speed of working. Like nervous system work very speedily, very rapidly. Hormones usually takes time. Both means of regulation, however, work too hard towards the same end, usually through negative feedback system. So there are some feedback systems where they both work, which we will discuss in our next slide. Here feedback system we will discuss. The body can regulate its internal environment through many feedback systems. Feedback, talking back, sending back messages, replying, informing after work has done. This you can say is the feedback. A feedback system or a feedback loop is a cycle of events in which the status of a body condition is monitored, evaluated, changed, re-monitored, re-evaluated, and so on. Each monitored variables such as body temperature, blood pressure, or blood glucose level is termed as control condition. So these are the variables like body temperature, body maintain itself by 30 degrees centigrade. You have studied a normal human body temperature is 37 degree. This much temperature is maintained by the body. Blood pressure is also maintained by the body. Blood glucose level, these all are variable which changes according to the conditions, according to the environment, according to the needs, but body restore them. So there are certain feedback system in our body, in human body, and animal body, that maintain their equilibrium level. Any disruption that changes a control condition is called stimulus. Whenever there is any change, a stimulus is generated, a message is generated, and this stimulus alarm or go to the feedback system, switch on the feedback system, message the brain, message the hormonal system, start up. The feedback system includes three basic components. So, a receptor cell, receptor organ, cell, organ tissue, a control center, and an effector. So, by these three basic components, the feedback system works. The receptors, which receive the signal, control center like our brain, which process, and the effector, which work according to the direction, according to the order of the brain. Same like our, you can say modern day computer, it's receive input, process the data, and give the output. In this figure, there is receptors, control center, effector. There is any stimulus, there is change in the internal environment of the body, disrupts homeostasis by increasing or decreasing any variable. Any variable can be body temperature, glucose level, pressure, blood pressure. So any disruption, any change in the homeostasis, any variable is act as a stimulus. And control condition where normal variables, normal range body is in normal condition. If there is stimulus, the normal condition changes. That is monitored by receptors. Receptors are present in the whole body. A cell, a tissue, an organ can act as a receptor, receive signals, check all things, all variables, keep monitoring. If there is any kind of change, any kind of disturbance in that particular parameters, particular variables, it sends inputs via nerve impulses or chemical signal. Inputs goes to the control center. The control center can be brain or any gland. Basically, control center is brain. The brain process and give output that receive the input and provides nerve impulses, signals or chemical signals to the effector organ. That brings about a change. The change which have been disturbed over here, it revert over here. It's maintain normal condition. Response that alters the control condition. Here control condition was any change, any stimulus change that control condition. This all receptors, control center and effector work in a coordination and maintained, restored that condition. That condition was altered. There is a feedback system. Whenever the response, their control condition is reverted, or you can say control condition is attained, their return signal goes return to homeostasis when the response brings the control condition back to the normal. When conditions become normal, it sends signal control center, and these steps do not move forward. This receptor do not sense any stimulus. Control centers do not get any input, and the control center do not give any output. If the control condition is under control, if the equilibrium is maintained, and if any change occurs, this receptor receive signal, control center control sends effector organ output, and effector organ alter the or make normal that condition, normal equilibrium maintained, and this is the common operation of the feedback system. Like here, a receptor is a body structure that monitors change in a controlled conditions and sends input to a control center. So receptor, as I told you earlier, that is a control center. Receptor is a body structure that monitors, that keep on monitoring, that keep on checking, that keep off on analyzing the condition, whether it is in under control or not, whether their values are under normal condition, their normal values or not. If it is not, it sends a signal, input to the control center. The pathway is called an efferent pathways, if towards and carried. Since the information flows towards the control center, if the information flows toward the control center, means from receptor to the control center signal moves, it is called afferent pathways. If reverse, it is called efferent pathways. So we will talk later regarding efferent pathways. Typically the inputs is in the form of nerve impulse or chemicals. So any inputs which come to brain or a control center is in the form of impulse. If brain, its impulses, sends impulses, nerve impulses, and whether if it is hormones, any gland, endocrine system, it sends chemical signals. For example, certain nerve ending in the skin sense temperatures and can detect changes such as dramatic drop in temperature. If there is any change in temperature is too high, temperature is too high or temperature is too low, the skin have certain nerve endings that has capability, that has capacity, that has characteristic feature that can detect this change in temperature, and this change in temperature is sensed by this receptor organ nerve ending present in the skin, sent to the control center, that is brain. So this is called afferent pathway. A control center in the body, for example, is the brain. We have talked about receptor organ, which is skin, any organ, any body parts which monitor, which keep on analyzing the conditions, parameters. Here control center is the body. In the body is, for example, is the brain, sets the range of values within which control conditions should be maintained. The brain center, control center, have certain range of values which is considered as normal control condition. Evaluates the input it receives from the receptors. If it gets any inputs below the normal range of that particular variable, it receives receptors and generates output command when they are needed. So basically, like brain is the CPU of our human body. So it processes the data inputs received from the receptor organ and process it, whether it is in the normal condition, whether it is in the normal range or not. If it is not, it generates output commands and sent to the effector organ. The output from the control center typically occurs as nerve impulses or hormones. Output is also sent as nerve impulses or hormones or other chemical signals. So there are signals, nervous system have signals, hormonal system also have signal chemicals. They travel, moves in the body from one part to other part, send signals to the control center as well as effector organ. This pathway is called efferent pathway. Away, E means away from the center, away from the control center. If signal comes to the control center, it is called afferent. If signal come from control center is called efferent pathway, away from the towards the. In our skin temperature, example, the brain acts as a control center, receiving nerve impulses from the skin receptor and generating nerve impulses at output. When, as we have talked about, rise in temperature or sudden fall in temperature, the skin receives sense outer environment and sends signal to the control center. Control center sends signal to the muscles in the skin outer covering. The muscle work their function like make body shivering, or there is goosebump, or there is hairs, body hair, so that our body get protected from that extreme cold condition. Similarly, if there is temperature too high, our body sense or skin sense high temperature, send signal to the brain. Brain sends signal for the perspiration, for the sweating. The skin the glands in the skin start secreting watery fluid, that is sweat, and that sweat start cooling the body according to the environmental temperature. An effector is a body structure, as receptor is also a body structure, control center is a brain, and the effector is also a body structure that receives output from the control center and produces a response or effect that changes the controlled condition. So both effector and receptors are the body structures which receives information from the environment, which receives information from the brain. Nearly every organ or tissue in the body behaves as an effector. When your body temperature drops sharply, your brain, that is control center, sends nerve impulses output to the skeletal muscle, that is effector. As I have discussed here also, it says if there is temperature drops very sharply, the brain control center sends nerve impulses to the skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle are the effector organ. The result is shivering, which generates heat and raises your body temperature. A group of receptors and effector communicating with their control center forms a feedback system that can regulate a controlled condition in the body's internal environment. So both effector and receptor organs communicating control center form a loop or regulating controlled condition. Feedback system form a feedback system. In a feedback system, the response of the system feedbacks information to the change the controlled condition in some way, either negating it, negative feedback, or enhancing it, positive feedback. So feedback system work are of two types, negative feedback and positive feedback. So here we will talk about negative feedback system. A negative feedback system reverses a change in the controlled condition. If there is any change going on, it will reverse it. That's why its name is negative. Blood pressure, for example, is the force exerted by blood pressure. It presses against the walls of the blood vessels. When the heart beats faster or harder, blood pressure, BP, increases. So if there is any change in the blood pressure, a negative feedback system work on it. Here, how? Let's see. Baroreceptor, that is receptors for the pressure sense. The receptors which have the ability to sense the change in the pressure. Pressure sensitive nerve cells located in the wall of certain blood vessels detect the higher pressure. So these are baroreceptors are the receptors they sense the change in the pressure. If there is any change, increase in the blood pressure, the receptor receive signals and they will send this input to the brain, the control center. The baroreceptor sends nerve impulses input to the brain control center, which interpret the impulse and respond by sending nerve impulse. So control center receives input and process, interpret the this input and resend or respond by sending nerve impulse output to the heart and the blood vessels. That is, heart and blood vessel are the effector organ. Heart rate decreases and the blood vessels dilate, which causes blood pressure to decrease. So blood decrease in the blood pressure is the response. So in initial stage, blood pressure was increased at the increased level, blood pressure was high. As this brain involved, receptor involved, effector organ involved, they changed high blood pressure to the normal blood pressure. So in this way, negative feedback, if the blood pressure is decreases to normal, a negative feedback system will work and further impulse will not generated by the or not sensed by the receptor organ, and these all processes will not going on. Over in this diagram we will see what I have discussed regarding blood pressure. So this sequence of events quickly return the control condition, that is plus pressure, to the normal and homeostasis is restored. Notice that the activity of the effector causes BP to drop, a result that negate the original stimulus that increase in the blood pressure. So original stimulus was increased and final result was its decrease, negative original. That is why it is called a negative feedback system, because it has negated it. Like this figure is regarding the homeostatic regulation of blood pressure by negative feedback system. The here positive and there negative feedback response. The broken return arrow with a negative sign surrounded by a circle symbolizes negative feedback system. This system from here response to the control condition is termed as negative feedback system. Look over here. See, there was blood pressure in the control condition. If any stimulus came and disturbed homeostasis and increased blood pressure, the receptor baroreceptor in the blood vessels sense that change in the blood pressure and generated input and sends input to the nerve or in the form of nerve impulses to the control center, that is brain. And brain interpreted that inputs and sent output via nerve impulses to the effector organ like heart and blood vessels, and a decrease in the heart rate and the widening of the blood vessel causes blood pressure to decrease. Though there also control condition or decreased blood pressure or normal blood pressure is maintained. If the normal blood pressure is maintained and signal reverse goes back to the control center, and that stimulus or the receptor, they will not sense any pressure. Any baroreceptors will not receive any pressure stimulus because the blood pressure is normal, and this all input and output will not occur. Next is the positive feedback system. Unlike a negative feedback system, a positive feedback system tends to strengthen or reinforce the change in one of the body's controlled condition. In a positive feedback system, the response affects the control condition differently than in negative feedback system. The control center still provides commands to an effector, but this same time the effector produces a physiological response that adds to or reinforces the initial stage changes in the control condition. The action of positive feedback system continue until it is interrupted by some mechanism. So positive feedback system is the system which strengthen or reinforce the change in one's body's control condition. The control condition is maintained by the positive feedback system. Normal homeostasis is maintained by the positive feedback system. Like here, example, normal childbirth provide a good example of positive feedback system. The first contraction of the labor, that is stimulus, pushes part of the fetus into the cervix, the lowest part of the uterus, which opens into vagina. In the case of childbirth, there is a contraction of labor, muscles contract. It pushes the fetus out of the cervix. Cervix is the lowest part of the uterus, which opens out via vagina. Touch sensitive nerve cells, that is receptors, monitor the amount of stretching of the cervix, that is control condition. These receptors normally sense amount of stretch in the cervix. If it receives more stretch, more pressure, as stretching increases, they send more nerve impulses, that is output to the brain and control center, which is brain is a control center, which in turn releases the hormone oxytocin, that is output into the blood. And this oxytocin causes muscles in the wall of the uterus, that is effector organ, to contract even more forcibly. So here, there were already stretching, and effector organ also start more stretching, more contraction, so that a positive thing happen. The fetus comes out of the uterus via vagina. So this is the positive feedback system. For example, the contraction pushes the fetus farther down the uterus, which stretches the cervix even more. So here, more and more stretching goes on. For initial stretching was lesser. After positive feedback, stretching become more. Stretching become strengthened. That's why it's called the cycle of stretching, hormone release, and the even stronger contraction is interrupted only by the birth of the baby. Once a baby got birth out of the body, the stretching will stopped. Then stretching of the cervix ceases and the oxytocin is no longer released. So in this way, the positive control of labor contraction during childbirth of the baby, this broken line, the plus sign, the broken line arrow with the positive sign surrounded by a circle symbolizes positive feedback. Here, with the diagram, you can understand very well. Here, contraction of the wall of the uterus forces the baby head or body into the cervix. The control condition, stretching of the cervix increased. Normal condition, in normal condition there was no stretching. As the stretching started, the receptors, that sensitive receptor in the cervix, sensed and sent signal inputs to the brain control center. The brain interprets input and releases oxytocin. The oxytocin acts on the muscles of the wall of the uterus, that is effector organs, and more stretching, more contraction started, which pushes the baby out of the womb. So response, interruption of the cycle, the birth of the baby. The cycle interrupted by a birth of the baby. If birth doesn't happen, the strengthening of stretch will go more and more. As the baby got its birth, the stretch will stop, no hormone will release, and it all will ceases, stopped. Interruption of the cycle, the birth of the baby decreases stretching of the cervix, thus breaking the positive feedback cycle. Another example of positive feedback is what happened to your body when you lost a great deal of blood. In the blood loss in accident or any way, there act as a there is positive feedback system. Under normal conditions, the heart pumps blood under sufficient pressure to body cells to provide them with oxygen and nutrients to maintain homeostasis. Under normal condition, pumping of heart goes on normally. Pressure of the blood is normal. These all is to provide oxygen and nutrients to maintain homeostasis, normal body conditions. Upon severe blood loss, blood pressure drops and the blood cells, including heart cells, receives less oxygen and function less efficiently. If the blood loss continues, heart cells become weaker, the pumping action of the heart decreases further, and blood pressure continues to fall. This is an example of positive feedback cycle that has serious consequences and may even lead to death if there is no medical intervention. So, blood pressure falls to prevent blood loss. If it goes on, the blood pressure will decrease. Very dangerous condition, and ultimately it will stop. Once heart stop it working, pumping, the animal dies. That's all. Thank you. Please like this video, share to your friends who are in need of this kind of video. Please subscribe my channel for this kind of informative videos. Thank you. Thanks a lot.